The alien dreadnought has finally arrived in 2024, much to the anticipation of fans. As a direct sequel to the Pandemic series, this film promises to take you on a thrilling journey through space. The year is 2142, and humanity has already entered the age of space colonization. Rain works as a miner for the Weyland Corporation on a distant planet. However, the environment is so harsh that Rain's parents succumb to the dust from the mines, leaving her and his brother Andy to fend for themselves. Today marks the end of their contract, and they plan to travel to a habitable planet called Ivaga, but a corrupt official, taking advantage of their orphan status, extends their contract by another term. As Rain tries to argue, she notices Andy getting into a scuffle with some thugs outside. Andy is convulsing, and white fluid is leaking from his head. It turns out that Andy is actually a synthetic being, found by Rain's parents years ago and integrated into their family after being repaired. Rain uses a key to reboot Andy, who then recovers. Just as the brothers are feeling hopeless, their friend Tyler comes with good news. The previous day, while operating a transport ship, they intercepted a broken distress signal from 300 kilometers above the planet. They discover a derelict Weyland Corporation warship floating nearby. From the look of the damaged ship, it was clearly abandoned. Tyler suggests a bold plan since they are all orphans and the corporation won't let them leave. They should commandeer the abandoned warship and head for Ivaga. However, the journey will take 9 years, and they'll need to rely on the ship's cryosleep chambers for survival. The only question is whether there's enough cryogenic fluid left in the ship. Since all synthetic beings are made by Weyland Corp, Andy is equipped with the necessary permissions to pilot the warship. Rather than die in the mines like their parents, the group decides to take a chance. They quickly board their transport ship and, after some turbulence, they break through the thick cloud cover and enter space. Soon, they see a massive object looming ahead of them. It turns out not to be a warship, but a space station. With Navarro's skillful piloting, the transport ship docks with the station. Andy inserts his fingers into the key port, and the doors slowly open. Little do they know, a nightmare is about to begin. The three of them crawl through narrow ducts into the station and realize that there's no gravity on board. Due to a system malfunction, the gravity controllers keep rebooting. They make their way to the ship's cabin and begin searching for the cryosleep pods. Thankfully, Andy manages to restore the power systems using his access. Tyler excitedly opens the pods, only to discover that there's only enough cryogenic fluid for 2.5 years. However, they need 9 years to reach Ivaga. Just then, Tyler spots a cryogenic storage room nearby, which might contain more fluid. The group heads to a laboratory where they suspect the cryogenic fluid is stored. Along the way, Bjorn becomes hostile towards Andy, harboring resentment because his father died in a mining accident. The accident was caused by a synthetic being, who sealed the mine to protect the others, but at the cost of Bjorn's father's life. As Bjorn threatens Andy with a stun rod, Tyler finds the body of another synthetic being on the ground, completely corroded. Fearing a chemical leak, the group rushes to the cryogenic storage room. They find the floor covered in water, but fortunately, the cryogenic fluid is intact. Enough for their journey. As they work together to extract the fluid, an alarm suddenly blares. The doors slam shut, and even Andy cannot open them. Rain and Navarro rush back to the main ship. Seeing the dead synthetic on the floor, Rain gets an idea. He suggests transferring the synthetics module into Andy, which should give him higher access permissions. What they don't realize is that removing the cryogenic fluid has caused the ship's temperature to rapidly rise, and a terrifying creature is beginning to wake up. At the same time, Navarro, playing with a light stick she found earlier, is suddenly grabbed by a fallen figure. Without wasting time, Rain hands the module to Tyler, and Andy integrates it into his system. Andy's expression changes, revealing he is rebooting, but just as that happens, the creature that had been fully awakened enters the water. Before Tyler can react, one of the monsters lunges at him. Luckily, Bjorn uses the stun rod to save him, though he is knocked out in the process. It's unclear how many monsters are lurking in the water. Both Tyler and Bjorn are exhausted, but Andy wakes up just in time. With his new permissions, Andy opens the door, but the creature smashes through the glass, flooding the area. At that moment, Rain realizes that the creature isn't trying to kill Navarro. It appears to be providing her with oxygen, suggesting a symbiotic relationship. The module inserted into his brain not only granted him higher access permissions but also enhanced his physical capabilities and intelligence, even restoring his electroshock system. However, he did not inherit the synthetic being's memories. so he had no idea what the creature before them was. The group shifted their gaze to the remaining half of the synthetic being, and as the power was restored, it suddenly jolted awake. Following its gaze, they looked up and saw several terrifying alien corpses. It turned out that, 20 years ago, an alien had been thrown into outer space. 6 months later, Weyland Corporation retrieved this alien, which had been drifting in space. Even without air or water, the alien somehow remained alive, leading to the catastrophe that befell the space station. At this moment, Rain suggested that since the aliens were vulnerable to cold, they should use the cryogenic fluid to attack its tail. Sure enough, the creature quickly loosened its grip, and the group seized the opportunity to rescue Navarro as the monster fled. Suddenly, Navarro woke up in shock, shaken by everything that had just happened. The synthetic being, however, indicated that the creature had a 60% chance of successfully implanting a parasite. Andy immediately blocked the others, forbidding them from taking Navarro back to the ship, but Bjorn suddenly grabbed the stun rod and knocked Andy aside. Navarro seized the opportunity to run back to the cockpit of the ship. With Andy hot on her heels, Navarro disconnected the ship from the space station. At this moment, Kay, who had been resting due to her pregnancy, entered the cockpit confused, only to see Navarro clutching her chest in pain. Navarro used a mini X-ray to scan her chest and discovered something hidden inside. Navarro began to convulse, kicking the throttle in the process, causing the ship to spin rapidly around the station. At that moment, the alien burst from her body, and the out-of-control ship crashed into the warehouse on the other side of the space station. As the doors automatically closed, everything finally returned to silence. The collision had knocked the space station off course, and it was now accelerating towards the asteroid belt. The three wanted to reach the other side to board their ship and escape, but a creature blocked their only path. Just when they were at a loss, Andy came forward and told them that the creature was blind. Relying on body heat and sound to detect humans, Rain suddenly had an idea. If they could adjust the ship's temperature to match human body heat, they could sneak through the room quietly and possibly survive. Once the temperature was set, Andy opened the door, and, as expected, the creature didn't detect them. They moved silently, slipping through the room full of creatures without making a sound. Meanwhile, on the ship, Kay finally woke up, intending to step out and help her teammates, but she found an alien's molted skin on the floor. Looking up, she saw a giant egg pulsing rhythmically. Suddenly, Bjorn appeared behind her, grabbed the stun rod, and connected it to the power source, turning it up to maximum, then stabbed it into the egg. The egg let out a painful screech, but the stun rod was quickly corroded. As Rain recovered his senses, a barbed hook emerged from the egg. Soon after, Rain fell lifeless from the acid blood of the alien, which was about to hatch. Realizing the danger, Kay tried to escape but found the door wouldn't open. Desperate, she called Tyler via communicator. However, the sound of her voice drew the nearby creature's attention. Tyler whispered directions, guiding Kay to the key lying on the floor. On the other side, Tyler was under extreme stress, causing his body temperature to fluctuate. The creature instantly detected him. Thanks to Andy's precise calculations, they narrowly escaped death, managing to trap the creature outside the room. In the next scene, Kay wakes up again. As she prepares to leave quietly, an alien jumps on top of her. Kay's heart pounded with fear, but fortunately, the sound of the sprinklers masked her presence. Shortly after, the creature dragged away 2 corpses and left. Kay finally reached the space station's entrance, but she didn't have access and triggered the alarm instead. Just then, Tyler arrived at the scene. Andy was about to open the door but suddenly stopped. He realized that an alien was lurking nearby, waiting for the door to open. Tyler and Kay pleaded with Andy, with Tyler even falling to his knees, but Andy remained unmoved. Rain, furious, slapped Andy. The once kind brother had become cold and unfeeling. Rain finally understood that the module implanted in Andy's brain had altered his mind. Now, his primary goal was to complete the mission given to him by the synthetics before he could help them leave. The trio entered a lab that stored a mysterious black liquid. The secret behind the space station was finally revealed. The company had long known that the fragile human body was ill-suited for space colonization, but the alien was considered the universe's most perfect organism. Scientists had extracted a black substance from the alien, which could merge with and modify any life form, representing humanity's future evolution, the true Prometheus fire. Meanwhile, the alien was still hunting the group. Andy opened the armory, though they now had weapons. Firing them recklessly would cause the alien's blood to melt through the deck, spelling certain death for everyone. They quickly left and arrived at the conveyor belt. Andy suddenly stopped in his tracks, and the sight before them left all three stunned. They had arrived at the alien's nest, and just as they prepared to find another route, they heard Kay's desperate cry for help. Without hesitation, they rushed into the nest, which was filled with the corpses of those who had been parasitized by the alien. At last, they found Kay, barely clinging to life. Because there were no dead creatures on the ground, Andy concluded that Kay hadn't been parasitized yet. Rain, however, believed that if they could get Kay into the cryo chamber quickly, she could be treated upon waking, but the alien had already sensed their presence and was heading towards them. Countless aliens were swarming their way, and Andy began convulsing again from the recent impact. A clever alien stayed by his side, waiting for someone to come and rescue him. Reluctantly, Rain left Andy and took Kay into the elevator. As she watched the helpless Andy on the monitor, she couldn't bear to leave him behind. Having come to see him as a brother, and paused the elevator, she instructed Kay to go to the ship on her own, promising to catch up later, and then climbed down the elevator shaft herself. As Kay suddenly felt intense pain, it was clear the baby she was carrying couldn't hold on any longer. Luckily, the alien had already left, so Rain rushed over to Andy, restarted his system, and removed the module, finally restoring Andy's previous kind personality. But just then, the alien returned. The two tried to retreat to the lab and take another route back to the ship, but the synthetics had already locked the doors. After all, Kay had already brought the black liquid back to the ship, and everything else no longer mattered. In a sudden moment of inspiration, Rain shut off the gravity system and started shooting at the alien floating in midair. Without gravity, the alien moved slowly, becoming an easy target. The alien was soon defeated, but they were running out of bullets. Acidic blood floated all around them, and the two cautiously made their way through. Finally, they reached the elevator again, but without gravity. The elevator couldn't function. They leaped into the air, but suddenly, the alien grabbed Rain's leg. With a quick burst of gunfire, Rain freed herself, but she lost her balance and dropped her weapon. At that moment, the gravity system reactivated, and the alien's blood hit the deck, quickly corroding several holes. A powerful suction started pulling everything in. As the elevator shaft filled with swarming aliens, Andy dropped the elevator, finally solving the immediate threat. But one alien had managed to escape. Rain turned her head, and a creature appeared out of nowhere just as she began to lose hope. With only 10 seconds left before the asteroid impact, Rain made it back to the ship, where Kay was still waiting desperately. The two finally took off aboard the ship, and the space station gradually turned to ashes. Kay hurried into the hibernation pod, but just as Rain was about to follow her into hibernation, a warning sounded about a system interruption. Kay was in agony, though only 3 months pregnant. Her belly looked like she was about to give birth. With a scream of pain, Kay unexpectedly gave birth to an egg. Rain severed the umbilical cord, intending to throw the egg away, but she felt a sharp pain in her hand. Unable to bear it, she rushed back to get the freeze gun, but as the egg opened before her eyes, what emerged inside looked like a baby. In her moment of shock, the egg had already corroded through the floor of the cargo bay. Rain strapped on the freeze gun and hurried down to investigate, but the creature inside the egg had already disappeared, leaving only massive claw marks on the floor. Meanwhile, Andy, noticing something wrong, finished charging and arrived at the hibernation chamber. The room was already soaked in blood. Kay was barely alive, but her face was frozen in terror as she looked behind her. An alien approached Kay, seemingly recognizing her as its mother, but then it opened its gaping jaws wide. By the time Rain arrived, Kay had already lost her life, and the alien's next target was Rain herself. Rain pulled the trigger of the freeze gun, spraying freezing gas to hold back the alien. However, in the chaos, the freeze liquid began leaking out, spreading throughout the ship. Rain, shivering and stumbling, made her way to the cockpit and, fighting through the cold, finally managed to put on her spacesuit. But the alien, quickly adjusting to the temperature, prepared to break down the door. In a desperate moment, Rain came up with a plan. She would lure the alien into the cargo bay and eject it into space. Rain, clinging to a rope, made her way to the cargo hold, with the alien following closely behind. The only way to eject the cargo bay was to pull all 4 handles. Rain made her way toward the remaining 2 handles, but the alien seemed to realize her intention. The alien let out a human-like laugh. Just then, Rain took the opportunity to kick over the egg. The remaining liquid inside the egg had the same corrosive power as before. Rain, struggling, crawled back toward the ship, but the alien wasn't giving up easily as the corrosive liquid dripped onto her helmet. Cracks immediately appeared. At that moment, Rain noticed the alien's tail was stuck to the cargo bay, and her own rope had become entangled in the handle. In the end, Rain managed to crawl back onto the ship. She set the ship's course to autopilot, heading toward the planet Ivaga. Then, she and Andy finally entered the hibernation pod, embarking on an unknown journey. I'm a movie enthusiast. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.